This is the level 1 checkpoint video for episodes 1, 2, and 3. The current position is y to move. You should try to find the best sequence in this position, write down your answer, and you may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the answer in this position? In this position, we're seeing that the knight is a little bit overextended, so we can try to trap this piece, right? Let's try to find the available squares for the knight to jump. So knight to a4. The problem with this is that the pawn is also covering a4, is covering c4. Our knight is covering the d1 square, and our king is covering the d3 square as well as the knight. So we can try to somehow slowly get closer to the knight because the knight is pretty trapped in this position. So the best continuation in this position would be to bring the king forward since all the squares are already covered. They would probably try to move their king or do something like that, and then we can just get closer to the knight. And then they would just lose the knight in this position. Another thing that they could do in this position would be to try to just move the knight somehow. If we were able to get closer to the knight, they would try to escape like this and try to have a pass pawn to promote right away, right? But the problem with this is that if they were to move here, the king is in time to stop the pawn from promoting. The current position is y to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position and write down your answer. You may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the continuation in this position? So in this position, we need to see any checks, captures, attacks, correct? We have our checklist. So do we have any checks? In this case, we actually have a check with the bishop, but then the king would just move to d8. But instead, we can actually just give a check with the queen because of the bishop also covering the d7 square. In this position, just moving the queen to d7, that would be a checkmate, covering all these squares from here, on the horizontal one and also on d8. So that would just be a checkmate in one. The current position is black to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position. You may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the continuation in this position? So we can try to see if there are any checks, captures, attacks, correct? So if we were to give a check, the only check in this position, I mean, there are only two checks, right? But with the rook would just be attacked by the king if the king just moves to d2 or f2. Also, there's another check with the pawns here, but then the king would just retreat back. So then any checks that we have, not really, they're not that great. So let's move on to the next one on the checklist. We have any captures? Do we have any captures? We have a capture here with the rook. But if we were to take this with the rook, the knight would just capture back, and then the bishop takes, and these opposite colored bishops, and that game would probably end up in a draw. But instead of grabbing it with the rook, why don't we just take it with the bishop? In this case, if the knight were to capture back, we would be in an endgame position, a rook versus a bishop. And the rook is already attacking some key squares, which would help us push our pawns forward to promote into a queen. So we will be winning in this position. The current position is black to move. Try to find the best sequence in the position. You may stop the video now. We're able to spot the continuation in this position. So let's always try to see if there are any checks in the position, correct? So we have a check, a couple checks with a knight. We have knight c3 check, but they can just capture back with the rook or with the pawn. Nor want to knight a3. It doesn't really do much, but we can just be precise, very accurate in this position. We can just find other checks with the rooks. Remember that we have a battery of rooks here. So this is very powerful. Remember, when the rooks are connected, they're very strong. So in this position, we have rook takes b2 check, forcing the king to go to the only square that it can go to on a1. And then we have another check by the same rook. Rook takes a2 check, forcing the king to move to b1 only move. And now we finish the game here with rook takes b2, but rook h x b2. Now we're blocking all the squares from the king. That would just result in a checkmate for the black pieces. The current position is y to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position and write down your answer. You may stop the video now. We're able to spot the continuation in this position. So we're always trying to see in these positions we have any checks, captures, attacks, right? So in any checks available that we have, the only check available that we have in this position is not so great, because if we go with the queen to e8, the rook would just capture back, correct? So we would just lose a queen for no reason. So the next one on the checklist is a capture. Do we have any captures in this position? We have queen captures pawns, which is not super great. Anything else here? Were you able to spot it? Our sniper is looking along the diagonal here. It's a very, very strong diagonal. So in this position, we will just go ahead and capture a free rook that was just hanging out there. The current position is white to move. Try to find the best sequence in this position. You may stop the video now. Were you able to spot the continuation in this position? In this position, we can see that our pawns are pretty strong, covering some key squares, and then noticing that our king is also covering some key squares, as well as our bishop. In this position is white to move, and the rook here, I think, just moved to e5, but they were not expecting this, right? We need to find the good move here, d4. d4 completely trapping the rook. Now we can see that the rook cannot go there. There. Remember, the bishop is attacking along the diagonal. The king is covering all these squares, and our pawn on f5 is also covering the e6 square. So the rook doesn't really have anywhere to go, correct? If they go here, the bishop will just capture. In this position, they will probably just try to get a desperado and just grab a pawn along the way. But then after something like this, we can always just capture the pawn here and then try to promote our pawn into a queen. So this will be winning for the white pieces.